Hello, and welcome back to another episode of J-Pod, Jefferson School District's very own podcast. I'm your host, Superintendent Brad Capener, and I'm joined today again by my two co-hosts, Chris Shaw, Becca Mallory. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is a wonderful Friday morning.
Yes.
It is.
And Friday morning before break.
I'm so excited.
So it's good, right?
I mean, Chris doesn't get the 2 weeks off like we do,
That's
but
I will
Or
still
I
be
do.
working.
Yeah.
No rest for the wicked.
I relate to that. And I am going to take some time. I'm definitely taking some time. So anyway, just for our community listeners, our podcast, as you know, is designed to strengthen the connection between our community and our schools. Aim to inform our community and all of the progress we are making in a variety of ways. And today I'm really excited because we have a special guest here from outside of our organization. She represents Stand for Children. This is an organization. It's a national organization with chapters in several states, including Oregon. And Johnna Timms is our special guest this morning. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. They are, now make sure I get this right. You guys are a nonprofit.
Correct?
Yeah. And you advocate for improving education.
Absolutely. We
Right.
do advocacy in education, but also in areas of social justice,
Okay.
racial justice,
Mhm.
and anything that really benefits our communities around our kids and their families.
Wonderful. And so most recently, you guys have been involved in the Early Literacy Success Initiative that was embraced by the governor.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So I want to really dive into that to have an understanding of how that all started and where we are. But before that, just to say that all school districts have the ability to receive a grant to help support their efforts in building strong early literacy. And that is due to the Early Literacy Initiative passing. The governor's embraced this. And so now Jefferson has completed the application and will be submitting it this week.
Okay.
We will be using the money to pay for our literacy coach at the elementary school. As I've shared with listeners in previous literacy podcasts, every teacher at Jefferson Elementary has signed on to become trained in letters.
That is amazing.
Isn't that amazing? Well, it is.
it's going to be so great for our kids. I'm really excited
Yeah.
about this.
Well, and for the listener, I mean, you may think, oh yeah, everyone's signed on. This is not something that schools typically do, where every
Right.
staff
That is
person
correct.
does this. In fact, when we offered it to K-3, our 4th and 5th grade teachers came to the principal and said, why can't we be a part of it
Oh,
too?
wow.
And so he brought that to me and said they want to do it. And I was like, okay.
Having 100% of your teachers on board with something is unheard
It
of.
really is. It really is.
And it's really amazing considering just how much work it is. They are
And
having
time.
to do time and effort to put into all this. It's amazing that so many people jumped on board.
Well, it's a 2-year program.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
every teacher that comes out of this 2-year program is going to have a literacy endorsement. And they're going to be a specialist.
Yeah.
And so in 5th grade, so you're not teaching reading typically, 4th and 5th grade, right? It's typically a primary responsibility. But what we're seeing is that not every child is ready in 4th, 5th grade or prepared to the level that we'd like.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
And so our 4th and 5th grade teachers came and said, hey, we also are dealing with kids who have gaps in literacy, and we need to have the skill set to be able to correct that, which made perfect sense to me. I just thought, well, yeah, of course you do.
And 4th and 5th grade teachers often don't get the information in their teacher prep programs around
Right.
the teaching of reading.
Right.
That's really a very early childhood elementary skill, and so I'm so excited.
And a lot of what I'm hearing too is that just the way that we were taught in the very beginning of how to teach is
Yeah.
so not wonderful for our kids. We thought, well, you continue the same thing that's been working for years and years, but we have a different generation. They are learning differently.
right.
They're taking in, and we have new science-based curriculum and information out there that proves that actually there's a better way to do that. So, and
The fact that you guys are embracing that is it's really
I think
incredible.
it's going to be interesting to come and look at the data 5 years apart, where
Yes.
Yeah.
and see what what it really translated into.
I'm so glad you said 5 years.
Yes.
Because I think sometimes we embrace research and we embrace the science, and we don't take into consideration that we're dealing with human beings,
Mhm.
Yes.
right?
It's
And
not an instant change.
it is not.
Yeah.
and we need the time to actually, hone our skills and support our kids and, see that progression.
Yeah.
Well, I want to see like the kindergartners who like get introduced to it and then spend the next 5 years with it being reinforced and see how they enter middle school and what differences that makes down the line.
Yeah.
The potential is just huge.
Yeah.
And I want to get to in a minute here. We're going to get to the problem across the state of literacy, where Oregon stands.
And I apologize. I will tell you, I geek out on this stuff, you guys.
I ditto. I hear ya.
So you're gonna have to scale back, Johnna. Come on.
That's awesome. So I think that the potential for Jefferson is once we're already engaged right now in the discussion. So it's not that we have to wait 2 years for folks to be trained.
And you have been.
We have been.
Yeah.
We have a literacy coach. And part of the reason our teachers got so excited about it was because of our literacy coach.
Yeah.
And they're seeing the difference those strategies make in the classroom. They're buying in. They say, yeah, this is good. Also, our Principal Sullivan, has a reading endorsement. And what he says is, because he was a primary teacher as well, and what he says is that the training that he got wasn't necessarily the right training.
Yeah.
Like he's going through the program with his staff, and he's saying, "I'm learning things I didn't know." So I'm really interested in why literacy has been maybe off the mark a little bit for years. I don't know. Like we talk about now, it's the science of reading. I do have to say though that the science of reading is not a new concept, right?
Not.
And where I come from, originally California. My wife's a first grade teacher, and they were doing the science of reading 30 years ago. So, I mean, it's not like it's a new, oh gosh, let's do this. This is just tried and true literacy instruction. But yet there's a lot of folks that have not necessarily been doing it the way that the letters group is talking about. So anyway, let's get into this conversation a little bit because, we have our passionate expert here. So can you tell us a little bit about, your involvement, background, and literacy and involvement with Stand for Children?
Sure. Well, as I said, I can really geek out on this stuff because I started my career as an early childhood teacher. I taught kindergarten. I taught first grade. Did some work in early intervention with 3 to 5 year olds, and saw really early how important having those strong literacy skills are. And so as my career progressed, and I did more work, I went back to get a master's, did work in special ed, and got a reading endorsement as well. And really wanted to put that into work around how we take what research tells us is the way our kids' brains work and the specific things that kids need in order to learn to read. So did a bunch of work there, did classroom work. I worked at the Oregon Department of Ed for about 5 years, led a big program at an ESD. And then after the pandemic, the pandemic kind of hit us all, right?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, right? And I was trying to sort of figure out what my next adventure was going to be. And so I was going to take some time off. And a past colleague of mine, Sarah Pope, who is the executive director of Stand for Children, Oregon, called me and said, hey, we're really interested in supporting getting more information out and support for good literacy skills for kids. She knew my background and said, will you come join us? And I thought, absolutely, this would be easy, right? Like, who doesn't want kids to learn how to read?
Right.
Right?
That seems like a no-brainer.
Exactly. Right? And what I found was that there was a whole body of research and information skills that even I didn't have. If after 20 years in education, after reading endorsement and all of those things, so it really took me some time to go back and learn and reshape how I was approaching this idea.
So with literacy, like what has it been that it hasn't been research, following research, or I mean, where's the disconnect?
Yeah,
because we're getting to this now, and everyone's talking about the science of reading and research-based practices that has a nice blend, right, of awareness and all that stuff, right? But what's the difference? Like, what was it before? Why are we having to change or transform into that?
Yeah. So my mama used to always say, when you know better, you do better, right?
I like that.
And though the research has been out there for easily about 4 decades,
Wow.
how we were trained in, at least how I was trained in my teacher prep program,
Right.
Didn't always keep up with that.
Gotcha.
And so there was really this belief that kids were able to pick up reading in the same way that we learn language, right? Like by immersion.
Yeah.
And by, loving books and exposure, right?
Picture.
Exactly. And so, and that's sort of how I was taught in my teacher prep programs, how to get kids excited about reading. What I didn't know at the time, and I think that now teacher prep programs are really understanding as well, is that there is a science, like we call it the science of reading, right? There's a science to how the brain picks up sound and letters and puts those things together and makes meaning out of them. So I don't think it's the research hasn't changed. Right. It's what we know about it and how we are operationalizing that in instruction and in classrooms. Yeah. That is making the shift now.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that the shift is happening. I think it's really palpable. Right? You can really see the difference. And right now, so let's switch to Oregon and literacy in Oregon.
Sure.
And where are we right now in terms of kids coming in out of 3rd grade? Are they ready to read? I mean, where are we? I know some very loose statistics around 30% of students being prepared, and meaning that there's a lot of students who aren't at that point. Right. So is that kind of what you're seeing? Statewide?
Absolutely. The statistics are around statewide, a little over 40% of our kids are reading at what we call at benchmark, at a place that we know that they can go on and be successful at the 3rd grade level. But that means over 60% of our kids aren't.
Yeah.
And
that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
And I think, as I'm sitting here looking at you guys and you're nodding, I mean, I don't think any of us are okay with that.
Right.
No.
Agreed.
So,
I don't think any educator should be okay with that. Like, it's okay. 60% of my kids can't read. They'll figure it out later.
Right. And as a woman of color, as a Black educator, the thing that is really stands out to me is kids of color we're seeing have even less success.
Really?
So we're seeing that African American kids are at about a 24 to 28% reading at benchmark. We're seeing our Native students, our Indigenous communities, our communities of Latina students are struggling as well. But we're all struggling, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about one group. It's putting all, being cognizant of that, and then also realizing that we've got to change for the best for all of our kids.
Yeah.
And I think that this legislation is a good start in helping that happen.
Good. Yeah, I was going to ask you about this initiative and how you see it changing the landscape of Oregon schools.
Yeah. So the reason Stand for Children got involved in this is back in about 2016, we had a statewide measure 98, that really put into place some targeted funds for high school.
Right.
Understanding that we knew that we needed to kids graduating from high school to be successful in their life. We saw that and then realized that we really needed to bookend that with good, strong early childhood supports. And when we looked at that, that data, we realized that literacy was probably our tipping point for that. If we could get kids really strong in literacy, third and fourth and fifth grade, they have a much more likely chance of entering into high school, ready for those high school courses, to graduate from high school. And we know that what happens to students, their trajectory in life once they graduate from high school.
Well, I mean, third, fourth, and fifth, that's the tipping point where you switch from learning how to read to reading to learn.
Right.
And if you can't read by third, fourth, and fifth, you can't read information in order to learn new things.
So how do you get better at science? How do you get better at math?
Right.
How do you get better at all of those other things
You don't
that
know
are
how to read.
crucial?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's a big tipping point.
I'm sitting in front of a microphone, but I feel like standing up and applauding.
I agree.
Right?
I
It's
love
like,
her
yes.
passion. I love your passion about this.
You're so like, you're speaking to a small choir here.
Yeah, exactly.
But people that have been involved in education for a long time and see the challenges, I think.
Yeah.
And I think you're right on. I mean, early literacy it should be a priority, and we've been talking about this for years. And so when this came up, and Sarah came and presented, I was like, yes. And I reached out to Sarah and I was like, yes, this is something we need to do. And
Because what we were doing was not working.
yeah, I mean, we can talk about the funding and how much money and all that, but the idea of starting this conversation, I think that's where that's the win here.
Yeah.
Is we're really starting to say, hey, this is a priority for the state. We need to get better, right? 60% is not okay.
Absolutely.
And we need to turn that so it's more like 60 to 70% being that level.
Absolutely.
And then working on the rest. But we are in a deficit right now. We need to change that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's really encouraging that the governor took this on as one of her really 3 top priorities.
Yep.
So I think that was also a huge asset.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And without the governor's support, right, things don't and that's helps push initiatives, and that's really great. I do want to think about, the 0 to 5.
Yeah.
The preschool students.
Oh, you're talking my language now.
Yeah, and talking about parenting classes. So in my former life, I was a migrant specialist in Salem Kaiser, and we set up parenting classes to help parents learn how to teach kids how to interact with books.
Right.
And we did it in Spanish, and because we know that the language translates, the skills translate, right?
Mhm.
So we set up preschool programs that were in Spanish. And heavily focused on literacy to help them as they go into kindergarten, that they're able to have those pre-reading skills. And so I would love to see how we can expand this and expand the amount of dollars, and so that little small rural districts, most of the districts in Oregon are rural and small.
Yeah.
And so for us, money is a hard thing. We don't have the funding. So to be able to have more funding, to be able to do these like parenting classes and the 0 to 5 concentration, as well as the reading coach, because we're using ours for a reading coach, but we could also use more help support. So what is Stan's going to continue with this initiative?
Absolutely.
And what do you see as the next step?
Yeah, absolutely. I often say that you give Sarah Pope something and she will take it, and she's like a bulldog with a bone, right? We not only want to continue to support our legislators, our districts in this work currently, but also really support looking at how we increase funding. So this biennium, $90 million went into the, now this is where I geek out a little bit, went into the SSA.
Mm-hmm.
There were other funds also that were put into SIA. And that was for school districts. There's money for community-based organizations. There's money for early childhood. So I think the next real horizon is how we help our 0 to 5 really start to look at what are those foundational skills and how do we get those foundational skills to our kids' first teachers, their families, their parents, their communities, and then helps make that transition to kindergarten. Yes. So I know it is a big, it's something that in the future that we're looking at about how we support more funding and training and coaching at the early childhood level.
Absolutely. Well, to any legislator listening out there, hear this. This is a great start. We're very appreciative of this money and this ability to help move literacy in our schools. But we do need more.
Yeah.
And funding, we are very blessed with the SIA funding, which is, state funding to help school districts. We're very blessed that there's been such a commitment from our legislators to be able to fund schools. And we are appreciative of all that. However, this is one example of how we need more and why, right? Because if we
targeted funds,
right? and not to take away from what we already have,
exactly,
because those targeted funds are already, extremely
making a big
right.
impact.
Huge, they're like crucial for us.
Yeah.
So we can't take away from that to do literacy, but to add a little bit more so that we can have robust literacy, I think would just really change the mark here.
And can I make a plug for, I am somebody who cares deeply about equity. And equity doesn't just mean one thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just about race. It's not just about gender. It's about geography. Yeah. And we really need to support our majority of our districts. We have over 100 districts in the state that are considered small and rural out of 197.
Yeah.
And so how we resource those, I think is crucial, and I think gets to the heart of what we're really talking about equity.
Absolutely. I love that you said that because, as a small rural school district, as one of the 100?
Yes.
Yeah, as one of the 100, we are in such need.
Yeah.
And it is equity, right? We need the same resources.
Absolutely.
Our kids deserve to have the same education those bros.
Yeah.
So, I agree with you. Now, I could talk about this for another hour.
I think we all could, yeah.
This was so enjoyable. I had so much fun, but we are out of time already. And so with that, I just want to thank you again for coming and helping us understand this a little bit better. And this is really insightful. It's really good for our community and for our teachers and everybody listening to understand the state initiative, but also how this impacts Jefferson.
I love it. And please invite me back.
I was just about to say, you're coming back. You're ready for that.
I can geek out on this with you all for hours. So would love it.
And unfortunately, Sarah was going to be here today, Sarah Pope, and wasn't able to do that. And so, next time we'll have her as well. So. All right. Well, thank you so much. It was nice to meet you. Everybody have a great holiday, and we'll see you back in January.
New Year.
Christmas, New Year, Happy New Year, all of those good things.
Yeah.
See ya.
All right. Bye, everyone.